here from the fragrance channel, Scott Aromatico. Welcome. I'm so glad you guys could join us, man. I am super excited today because I've got a really special guest with me. It's been a long time in the making, and I'm really excited to have him. And his name is Callum Ross, and you are from the fragrance channel, Callum The Perfume Coach. Is that right?
Yes, that's my Instagram handle. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. And so what I wanted to say, Callum, before you get started and before I start asking you questions and you introduce yourself, I wanted to start off by giving you a little bit of an apology. And the reason why I want to do that is because, and I've been thinking about this, how I discovered you is because when I go through my feeds on Instagram, a lot of times I'll see pictures and I'm really there for the stars of the show, which are the fragrances. And as I'm scrolling through, I'll see the names that I'm interested in and that I want to know, or the fragrances that excite me. And I'll hit that heart button and I'll just keep scrolling until I hit that heart button. Sometimes I'm doing it out of obligation. Sometimes I'm doing it to be nice. Sometimes I'm doing it because I actually like the fragrance. And I see a lot of your pictures, and a lot of them are ingredients, not necessarily fragrance bottles or their terms or their definitions of things. And I just hit the heart button out of obligation. Okay. I'm being honest with you. And so one day I saw one of your ingredients, and it might've been iris root or something like that. I'm not sure. And I hit the like and I scrolled and I was like, wait a minute. So I scrolled back and I actually this time took the time to read what you said. And all your information on there is so invaluable. And I felt so guilty for just hitting the heart and not taking the time to read what you put on there, because I'm really passionate about fragrances. And it's only been a year that I've been passionate about it. But what you have to say on there is so invaluable. And anybody into fragrances could really learn a lot from you, especially about ingredients, terminology, how they work, how they affect people. And I just wanted to apologize for doing that because I'm guilty of that. And if people would really take the time to look at some of this content, they could really learn some things. And so thank you for putting that content out there. I know it takes some time. Thank you for lending us your knowledge, because you have a lot of knowledge to lend us. And honestly and truly, I mean this from the bottom of my heart, I really love your content. It's so good. So if you guys aren't following Callum Ross, I'm going to put a link to this video down below so you can find him easily. Please make sure you're following him and hit that bell notification like I did, so every time he releases something, you guys can get it in your feed. All right. I said that long-winded speech. Callum, tell them a little bit about where you live, what you do, anything you'd be willing to share, and then we'll get started into the interview.
Okay, well, first of all, hi guys. It's great to be on Scott's channel. Really enjoy the channel. So I'm Callum. I'm from London, but I now live in Ireland, just outside a town just outside Belfast. The reason why I live here is because my partner's from here, so I met her in London, and we now live over here. And we have two daughters. One's 3 and one's just a newborn baby. So my daughter Isla is my older daughter, and then my favourite fragrance ingredient is named after my other daughter Violet. So that's a bit about me and my family. So as a job, I'll talk a bit more about my job in a moment, but as a job, I have been a perfume trainer in the UK. So I'll share a little bit more about that and what I'm doing now later on in the session.
Awesome, man. That's I love the fact that your daughter is named after one of your favorite fragrance ingredients. That's awesome.
Fragrance community on Instagram, I did a post when she was born back in January. And I had so many beautiful, generous comments of what people said. And so many people said they loved the name Violet. And then obviously because it's my favorite ingredient as well, it just works perfectly.
No one can accuse you of not being enthusiastic about fragrances, right?
Exactly, yeah.
I honestly do the same thing with like all my pets. So like I love sports. So my boxer just passed away not too long ago, but I actually named my boxer after Kobe Bryant, the basketball player. So his name was Kobe, because I'm passionate about sports. So I get it.
Oh yeah, well, at least my favourite ingredient wasn't another name. It wasn't as nice. Something like lime or gardenia.
or cardamom.
Or cardamom, yeah, that would be a good one. Maybe your viewers could share in the comments below some of the worst fragrance ingredient names that they would not call their children.
That's right. Oud would probably be up there. What fragrance are you wearing right now to start the conversation?
So the fragrance I'm wearing right now, I knew this question was going to come right at the beginning. So the fragrance I'm wearing right now is Wonderwood by Comme des Garçons. Have you ever tried it before?
No, I don't know a lot about that house, honestly.
It's, I discovered this house back in 2016. So first of all, what I'm going to say about Comme des Garçons is it is a designer brand, but it feels like a niche brand just because of the high quality of the ingredients. But I discovered it actually when I was working in Selfridges in London back in 2016. One of my colleagues was working for the brand introduced me to this particular fragrance because they knew I loved woody notes. And for me, this is just the perfect celebration of woody notes in perfumery. It's a combination of cedarwood, vetiver, it's got oud, sandalwood, it's guyakwood. Sandalwood's beautiful, isn't it? So if you love woods in perfume, you have to try this. It's the ultimate one.
I just wrote it down. Tell what was Callums the Garçon and what was it called?
Comme des Garçons Wonderwood.
Wonderwood, okay.
Which is for me just the most incredible perfume. Just to share a bit more about my love for woody notes as I'm talking about it now, I absolutely adore like quite dry, warm, earthy woody notes. I know that you have notes like sandalwood, which are much more sweeter and creamy, and we say it's milky at times. But my love is the more drier, natural woody notes. So things like cedarwood, absolutely adore cedarwood. I absolutely adore the note of cypress wood as well. You ever tried cypress wood? Yeah. So yeah. It's like fir, piney. I absolutely adore that note, and the reason why I actually love the cypress note and the pine note, which has that fir-like scent, is because I remember as a child, my grandparents in their gardens had these beautiful fir bushes and trees. Just literally, I remember every Tuesday after school, we'd always go to my grandparents' house, and I always remember the scent of when we went to the garden and just to smell this beautiful note. So for me, it's a great memory, and if you really, really love fir. So the scent of fir and pine in perfumery. Have you ever tried Marc Jacobs Man?
No.
Oh, that's one as well to try. It's quite an old perfume now. I'm not sure it's been discontinued, but it's the most beautiful, beautiful fir note in perfumery. It's got that real green freshness, and also a fig note in it as well. So that's one to try too. But those are some of my favourite woody notes from perfumery. And I'll share more, I guess, at some point later in the session about some of my notes that I love.
Now, isn't that amazing, though, how fragrances can take you back and how they can transport you or, to another time and place, whether in the future or to a distant memory. I think that's so amazing. And song also has that same ability. But that's one of my things that I actually love and am passionate about is fragrances are the memories that they invoke. And I think that's really cool. And that was actually one of the first questions I have right down on my paper, which is what is a significant fragrance memory from your childhood? It's the first question I have.
Well, yes. So that's definitely when it comes to an actual odor, I would definitely say it would be the scent of fir and pine. Just it does remind me of my. I remember my grandpa would always pick us up from school, and then in the summer, my grandma would always be sitting in the garden sunbathing, and she would always run up to the garden to see her. And the first thing you'd recognise is the scent of pine and fir. So yeah, it definitely is. In terms of an odor, that is definitely an odor that brings up really great positive memories. What you're saying there about loving perfume for that reason, that's one of the sole reasons I love perfume. There's so many other reasons, but that's got to be the first reason why I love perfumery, because people don't really think about, obviously you said song can do it, but I think perfume does it in a much more instinctive way. It can bring back any form of memory. The second you smell something, instinctively you are immediately in that place that you were. You could have been 5 years old, you could have been 11 years old, any time in your life, and it instantly takes you back. And I think that's something so special about perfumery. And we actually call it the lock and key theory in perfume. So there's certain odors that obviously we have memories of it when we were younger, and only when you actually smell that odor, it's almost like the odor opens up a lock in your brain, and then suddenly you have this memory all over again. So it really is a special thing. But for me, in terms of odors, that would be one of my great memories. Would you also want to know about my first fragrances as well, some memories like that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Go ahead.
So in terms of fragrances, for me, it would probably be based on my parents. So the first one would be my mum. My mum is really into very fresh, green, almost like leafy green florals. So she, as a kid, my first memory is her wearing Chanel number 19.
Oh, wow.
Chanel number 19 is just the ultimate green fresh floral for me. It's got a note called galbanum, which creates this beautiful scent, almost like popping green peas. And another fragrance that reminds me of her is Herba Fresca, Aqua Allegoria range by Golan. I don't know if you've ever tried the Herba Fresca fragrance in Golan, but again, that's one of those very fresh green florals, and it's got a beautiful spearmint note in as well. So that definitely, whenever I smell those type of scents, and that includes notes that have lily of the valley in, because these ingredients are very similar, I always think of my mum. And in terms of my dad, I shared a bit about this actually in a session that I did on Instagram last week about my dad. My dad's always been into very classical masculine perfumes, the ones that you would see as classical. So things like Azzaro, the original for Homme, Paco Rabanne on the original. He's always loved fragrances like this. So because those fragrances remind me of my dad, so these are ones that are very typical masculine. They've got things like lavender in, they've got very dry woody notes. And they're a little bit marine as well, like aquatics. So actually there's what most people, when they think of fragrances like this, they think of sort of notes like lavender, they think of notes like sage. But when you think of these fragrances, actually the main note which makes them so enhanced and impactful to our noses is a synthetic note created by Firmenich called dihydromycin. So dihydromycin. So it's a synthetic note which was created around the time of the early 70s. And what it did is it absolutely transformed masculine perfumery, because the very classic masculine blends now had this aromatic property to it. So it was very herbaceous, very woody, but now they added almost like marine aquaticness to it. So this is what this note does to these perfumes. So for instance, you wouldn't have Davidoff Cool Water without that note, because it enhances the lavender. But yeah, Davidoff Cool Water is, for me, probably my first perfume memory. That and a fragrance called Diesel Plus Plus. Do you remember Diesel Plus Plus?
No.
So Diesel Plus Plus, so when I was growing up in sort of like the early 2000s, there was this fragrance by Diesel, which had like a white bottle, and it had the big red Diesel logo on, which I don't really use anymore. And it came in like a silver carton, which had a picture of a cow on. I
don't remember that one.
I'm sure some of your viewers know it, but what made it so unique is it had a lactonic note in. That's why it had the cow on the front. It was like a very like milky note, but it also had violets in. So this was my first introduction to the note of violet, and that's why I love it now. Because so many people, when they think of floral notes, they only think of feminine perfumery. But for me, there's so many fragrances that have flowers in that would be loved by men. So that was, for me, one of the first ones. But yeah, that would be my memories, I'd say.
I was listening to you talk and about your mother, and you were talking about Lily of the Valley and one of her fragrances. That's a note that has to be recreated, isn't it? It's not a note that you can get naturally, right? Is that right?
Yes, that is completely true. There's some ingredients out there that you can smell their scent when you're actually smelling the flower. But in terms of the extraction methods that we use, they're either just too fragile. So all the extraction methods we use, just the ingredient just crumbles. And so they're either too fragile, or there's various other reasons why we just cannot extract the note. And Lily of the Valley is one of those. Even though it's got the most incredibly stunning scent, and for me, it's just a symbol of the beginning of spring, right? I'm sure it's the same for you. It's that smell of when the winter's finally over, and then that first day is sort of like early March, late Feb, you walk outside and you can finally smell the flowers and trees growing their leaves and blossoming again. And that's the scent of Lily of the Valley. But you can't extract it naturally. There's various different synthetic versions of it that have been patented by various by pharmaceutical companies. But the main one is one called Lyro, which is patented by, I think it's by IFF, so in America, International Flavors and Fragrances. So yeah, it's an interesting note, Lily of the Valley, but it's the one that we cannot get. But just like to share your views as well, it's very often when you are looking at perfume ingredients, or sometimes even the title of a perfume, you see the word muguet. Have you ever seen that before on a perfume? Muguet.
Muguet?
Muguet.
Maybe I have. Maybe I just kind of glossed over it.
Yeah, so muguet means lily of the valley. It's the French word saying lily of the valley. But in perfumery, because obviously French way of perfumery is so influenced that people don't realize that it actually means the same thing. But it's used so often when you're looking at perfume title labels, it says muguet is the lily of the valley. But yeah, just to put the record straight, if anyone's ever seen that word.
It's amazing. It's just amazing to me how fragrances can tell a story without ever saying a word. It's why I love it. But okay, so we talked about a few notes, and we'll dive more into this as we go. But what are some of your, and we talked about touched a little bit about it on memories and stuff like that. But as you were growing up, and I'm sure you've traveled the world a little bit. I know you've been in London and where you live now, and I'm sure you've traveled all over the place. From your childhood and even to however old you are now, which I'm sure you're 25, I'm sure. What are some of your favorite fragrances that don't come from perfume? Like for instance, when spring comes, people love the smell of fresh cut lawn. Some people love the smell of gasoline. Do you have any kind of fragrances that you like that just come from traveling around, or things that invoke a certain reaction in you?
Wow, that's a really good question. Actually, it's not one that I've been asked a lot before, but it would be similar to what I've said before. So first of all, I do adore that scent at the beginning of spring. Like, who doesn't love the scent of early spring when it's like green and fresh and floral? And I also love the scent of freshly cut grass, yes, as you said. I also love the scent of when you are in the forest, and that's again similar to cedarwood. So it's the scent of very foliage and dry soil and wood all coming together. Essentially, that's a scent which you get in cedarwood and cypress and perfumes like that. Also, who doesn't love the scent of Christmas, hey? We all love the scent of Christmas time, the spices and the sweet foods. So definitely that would be something for me as well. So a combination of things, and I'm sure there's many, many more things that I could bring up and probably think about later.
I know I kind of caught you off guard with that one. I'm a big hiker. I love, it's one of my passions. Obviously fragrances are now, and I love drawing and I love hiking. So I understood what you were talking about when you're out in the forest and it has that distinctive smell. I'll tell you, one of the fragrances that I love, and I'm sure you've gotten your nose on it, that reminds me of hiking. It's the closest thing I've ever smelled to a nice little hike is Meander by Amouage. Man, have you smelled that? Wow.
Yeah, I think I've smelled it before. Yeah, beautiful, beautiful fragrance. I need to be more familiar with the Amouage scents. I've tried them, of course, but I need to start wearing them more properly because it's a brand that I adore and I love the bottles. Beautiful bottles.
It's so good. And there's another one I can't think of right now. The name just popped out of my head. I'm sure you could probably think of it really quickly. It's by Chanel. Oh man, it smells like a pine forest. I just can't remember. Yes, thank you.
By the private. Yeah, I knew you were going to say that because it's exactly the type of scent that it creates.
Yes.
Absolutely adore that. What about the smell of the beach as well? I love the smell of the beach. When your car gets close enough where you can start seeing the sea, and then you open the windows and you can smell like the salty sea air. You can smell the scent of the sand and the salt all together. Sorry?
Do you think anybody's captured that well? Who do you think has captured that well?
Well, it's been captured by many brands. Brands such as Aqua de Parma have caught that with so many of their perfumes. Tom Ford, I think, have done well. Actually, funny enough, Dolce & Gabbana, like the light blue range, obviously is designed to capture that. and there was a limited edition a couple of years ago called Like Blue Sun. I'm sure you've tried it. It had like a warm coconut note in and vanilla. For me, that was one of my favorite scents to capture, the scent of the seaside and the beach, especially the Mediterranean seaside. It was just gorgeous. But I guess any of these aquatic scents, like Aqua di Gioia as well, Aqua di Gio captures the scent by Armani. But yeah, for me, I would probably say Light Blue Sun was the one that captured that ultimate smell, especially the smell of the seaside in the summer. I don't know about you, but for me, I get a different, obviously, you know what it's like to be in the winter time and the cold at the sea. There's definitely a slightly different scent or odor that you get from the seaside in the winter to what you get in the summer. I don't know if you agree with me there.
No, I do.
But I definitely prefer the scent of the summertime, which I'm sure most people do when you're at the beach.
Yeah. And I also love the smell of after it rains or before it rains. That's that certain scent that's in the air as well. I think that's an amazing smell as well.
Oh my gosh, yes. Yeah, stunning. I actually had Instagram reels about that. If they want to check back on my reels, this would have been last year at some point. But I put a reels out with like a picture of the rain and just saying what perfumes remind you of the scent of the rain, and the perfume community shared loads. So if anyone wants to see that list, it's on my on my Instagram profile.
Yeah, I love Petite Martin.
So what fragrance was that? So I didn't hear you.
That was Petite Martin by is that Mason Francis Kirkjohn?
Oh, sorry, yeah. That's yeah.
It gives me that vibe.
Yeah, I agree. Mason Francis Kirkjohn does beautiful fragrances. Adore the brand.
All right. So what event or series of events kind of led you down this road to being a fragrance enthusiast, so to speak?
So of course I had those memories, as you said, about perfume when I was younger, and the fragrances that made me. So obviously I've got ones there, but when I'm saying how I actually started my real passion and drive for perfume, it definitely began when I started working in the perfume industry. So just to give you some context about me and my life, I went to university. I did a degree in politics, which you'd think has nothing to do with perfume, but they're two P's, right? So I like to stick to the topics that we give a P. But I finished university. I went to Manchester University. And then when I finished uni, I wanted to go traveling with all of my friends, because that's what you did in my generation. I'm sure people are doing it now even more. And I started working a job that my friend recommended me to do. He said, there's this job that you can do where you do sort of like temporary work. You go to the shops, the big department stores, you work for perfume brands, and you spray the product and hand it out and sell it to people. So, this sounds great. Yeah, I'll go and do that. This was about 10 years ago now that I started that. And my first experience, my first role was actually with Burberry. So I was given the opportunity to work for Burberry on their new launch of Burberry Body. Have you ever tried Burberry Body?
No, I've only tried Burberry London, is the only one I've tried.
Yeah, no, that's a great one as well. But Burberry Body was a new launch 2011, and it was a women's fragrance. And it was all about having 50 real roses in the bottle. So it was a true rose-based scent, but it had a beautiful sandalwood note as well. So I was working with this fragrance brand and this new fragrance, and my job was to wear, first of all, was to wear a gold shirt because that was the promotional clothing. And I would literally stand at the front of the department store when people walked in or people walked out. I would hand them the blotter or the tester strip and say, here, try this. And then if they liked it, I'd then talk to them more about the fragrance. And then eventually, hopefully, they'd buy it. I'm sure you've got experiences, right, of being in department stores and people have tried to hand you the paper blotters.
Yes. Yeah, that was pre-COVID. Yes.
Actually, I remember once I was at a training that Roger Dove was doing, and he referred to these people as the spray and pray brigade. So you spray and then you give it to a customer and you pray they're going to like it. But yeah, it was a difficult role. The first week or so, I couldn't sell. I was like, what's going on here? And then after about a week, I remember asking one of the more experienced staff members in the store, like, what do I need to do here? Like, why is it people aren't enjoying it? And they said, first of all, you need to completely relax and be yourself and not put yourself under too much pressure, because perfume's about having fun, right? And I think customers will feel that. And second of all, you need to understand that for customers, perfume is a very special product. It's a very special item. And just handing them a blotter and just assuming they're going to like it doesn't mean anything. You need to stop them. You need to ask them about their own personal experiences. You need to get to know the fragrances they've loved and worn before. And then when I realized this, I think it really got me to really love perfume. I started to really realize how perfume was, as you said at the beginning of the session, was so connected to people's lives, to their memories, to the most special moments in their lives. And the more I was working in these roles, so I had to work for a lot of dud brands, I guess, before I got to work for the big brands. I worked for brands like Juicy Couture. I worked for a lot of celebrity brands like Britney Spears, Kim Kardashian, Justin Bieber. These were my first year or so. And then eventually I got the opportunity to work for Procter & Gamble. So this is when I really got to work for one of the big brands. And we had Gucci, Lacoste, we had Dolce & Gabbana at the time, Hugo Boss. But yeah, it took me a little while, but I think for me, when it came to really getting into it as well, when I started to realize how special and precious perfume is to the moments of people's lives, think about how special perfume is to you. You'll be wearing a perfume, your mother and father will have perfumes that remind you of your childhood. You'll be wearing a perfume when you meet your first partner when you're a teenager. When you get married, you wear a perfume. Now your kids are born. When you're a grandparent, perfume is part of every single moment of your life. And then when you smell that perfume, it takes you to that moment, right? That's how perfume is. And when I really started to realize that, what really started to upset me was there's so much misconceptions about perfume, so much misinformation. And I felt like people didn't really understand all these difficult words, like just words that are thrown out, Oriental, Fougère, all the terminology, even eau de toilette. A lot of it's like terminology that doesn't really relate to a lot of people. So they miss out on what they really love because the sales consultants are told to say things like Oriental and Fougère without explaining what it means. So I guess my mission after that became to be able to really learn as much as I possibly could about these things and then find a way to be able to communicate that to customers in a really simple way. And then I really started to see the value that I was being able to give people after that. Of course, I was making sales, but for me, the real thing was when somebody walked out of that shop and I knew that I'd found them their wedding perfume, or I knew that I'd found them their dream perfume. And I think for me, that's the real gift of why I love what I do now. And I'm sure later on in the session I can share a little bit more about how I became a trainer. But I guess in a long-winded way, that is what got me into doing what I'm doing now.
Yeah, that's awesome, and you are so right. It's what attracted me too, is how little I knew, and the misconceptions that are out there that I was a part of, that I thought in my head, because I only knew what I knew. I didn't know any better, and just talking to people that are in my circles, like family members or stuff like that. They think perfume is a term that's meant for women, and they think cologne is a term that's meant for men. And that's kind of where I was too. And, I just didn't know I didn't know perfumes had, triangles, structure, or that they were compositions with notes and worked in concert with one another. And there was a top note and a dry down. I didn't know any of that then. And once all that got uncovered, I just thought somebody opened up a tomb of some great king, and there was all this treasure. And I was just looking at it my mind was like, and I've just gone down the rabbit hole, and it's been amazing. And I haven't even touched the surface.
it's just so much to go to this topic. And obviously it's difficult for when you've got people that are working in the shops, and many of my good friends have been people that have worked in these roles. I've worked in these roles, and sometimes they're not always given the correct information. Not always saying they are, they're not. A lot of the time they're giving great information and the training's amazing and impeccable. Sometimes they're not always giving the information that would most help the customer. And there's, as you said about misconceptions, there are so many, and every single one of these misconceptions, I'll give three, I guess, of my biggest misconceptions that I think affect customers loving perfume. Okay, the first one is the words cologne and aftershave. So I know that in America you use the word cologne to mean a masculine fragrance, right? In the UK, no one uses the word cologne for that. And in the UK, instead of saying cologne, most people would say aftershave to mean a masculine fragrance. Now, a lot of times, someone will go into a shop and they'll say to one of the sales assistants, "I need an aftershave for my husband." So they'll give you an aftershave instead of a fragrance, because aftershaves and fragrances are different. You can get aftershave versions of fragrances, but the aftershave has a much lower concentration of alcohol and the fragrance in, and they're splash-ons. They're not actually sprays. And cologne, and that's a whole huge topic, but a cologne is based on a very traditional fragrance type of fragrance from the 1700s. And the basis of cologne is basically fragrances that have really high concentrations of citrus notes in. So they're really fresh and uplifting. They're great to wear in the summer. And they're actually based on the tradition of like wearing citrus scents in places like Italy and the Mediterranean. So that's actually what a cologne traditionally is. But yeah, that's a misconception, of course, at the same time. My second one would be about, similar to what I was saying about colognes, really, it would be the understanding of concentration. So many people, and we'll stick with the typical ones, eau de toilettes and eau de parfums, or EDTs and EDPs, as most people would say. Concentrations are completely misunderstood. Most people think the eau de toilettes are the less valuable, cheaper version, and the eau de parfums are the more premium ones. That's what most people out there are led to believe. And even sales consultants are sort of talking to customers in a way to make them believe that the eau de parfum is better to go for. But that's misinformation again. They both have completely different purposes. Eau de toilette means refreshing water in French, essentially. And eau de toilette's purpose is to make you feel refreshed and uplifted. They have a really high concentration of citrus notes compared to an eau de parfum, which makes them obviously more airy, uplifting, fresh. And people are going to go, "Oh yeah, eau de toilettes don't last as long." But that's the point. Eau de toilettes are meant to be reapplied maybe 2-3 times throughout the day, because in the day you're going to feel hot, you're going to feel overwhelmed. You want to put a nice fresh perfume on to make you feel more refreshed again. Also, eau de toilettes are great to wear in the summertime, or if you live in a hot climate, or in the daytime, because again they make you feel fresher. There's not warm ingredients that are going to make you feel overwhelmed. So that's the point of an eau de toilette. But most customers will go, "Well, no, I'm not going for an eau de toilette. It doesn't last long, and it's not as valuable." And then they're missing what the purpose is of an eau de toilette, and that's frustrating. And eau de parfum is the same thing. An eau de parfum is obviously it's warmer, it's deeper, it's got much more base notes in it, which are the really warm fixative notes that stick on your skin for longer. So that's why it lasts longer in eau de parfum, because it has a higher concentration of base notes, which are designed to take longer to evaporate off our skin. But they're great in the winter time, obviously, because you want a warmer scent. They're great for if you're going out in the evening, because you want to feel a bit more dazzling and you want to wear these more sensual, more seductive notes that are in the base of fragrance. So people need to understand what these two terms really mean, and then I guess they'll be able to enjoy them. I know that's awesome. I know this answer is taking a long time here, but the third one I would say, which is the misconception which frustrates me too, and again, it's what completely stops people from enjoying perfume, is to understand how top notes, heart notes, and base notes are part of a perfume. So I see it as no different to if you're listening to a song, you've got verses, you've got choruses, and you've got bridges. And when you're listening to a song, you listen to different parts of that song at one time. A perfume's the same. It's built up of 3 different parts, and you've got to enjoy each part at different times. But people instantly smell a fragrance in a shop, and they're usually applied like too close to the blotter, so it just smells like the fragrance alcohol rather than the actual perfume. I'm sure someone's handed you a perfume blotter before and it's been soaking wet and it smelled of alcohol because they've sprayed it too close. but they'll instantly smell it. They go, I don't like this. And that's it. And it's over. But what happens sometimes is that people keep the perfumes, they put them in their handbags. And then a few hours later, they maybe have gone for lunch, gone to another shop. They've come back to me and they said, I absolutely love this now. I hated it at the beginning, but I love it now. What is it? It's because the heart notes and the base notes are coming out. And people need to be more patient when they're smelling perfume, and they need to understand how it works. Give it time. You may be somebody that hates top notes in a fragrance. You may hate citruses. You may hate herbaceous notes. You may love warm, seductive, woody notes and resinous notes. So that's another part of it as well. But I think it's very difficult because obviously when you're in a shop, you can't really try the part of the base. But I used to recommend to a lot of my team who work in the stores that maybe pre-spray blotters and then hand them to customers, because then they can smell the other parts of the scent. But yeah, these are probably the three areas, misconceptions and misunderstandings, that I think prevent people from finding their dream perfumes, and it's such a shame. And hopefully some of your audience, some may already know that, but some have discovered something new and now love their perfumes even more.
Yeah, this is a topic that I could go a while on and get frustrated. I don't understand. Like, I guess I'm naive, and maybe you do understand it because you've been doing this for a while, but I'm so naive and I'm new to this, but I love scent. And people always ask me in the reviews or when I just post a picture, yeah, but how long does it last? Or this one doesn't last really long. And I'm just one of those people that I wished I cared about that. But I don't care if something goes 9 hours, 12 hours. If I just like how it smells, I'm going to buy it. And that's it. And that's what I care about. It seems like there's this big importance over projection and performance, these buzzwords, more than there is the actual scent.
Beast mode. That's what
yes. How do you feel about that?
What about how I feel about, you mean about longevity and performance? And
yeah, like how people seem to put especially like where you hear it the most is, well, if I'm going to pay $300 for Parfums de Marly, then I expect it to last all day. And whereas if I do pay $300 for Parfums de Marly and I just like the scent, I don't care if it lasts 4 hours. Like I guess people want more bang for their buck. It's that theory. And I was wondering how you feel about that.
Yeah. I was about to actually use the same term as you, bang for your buck. Look, I understand the customer's perspective, and obviously I'm a consumer too. So when I'm saying customer, I mean myself as well. I understand people's perspective because perfumes are very expensive. Like nowadays, like the brands are charging £200, £300, £400. I don't know what the exchange rate would be in America, but I'm sure that's quite a lot of money. And people obviously want more bang for their buck. So if you're spending £300-400 on a perfume, you don't want it to not only last 3 hours. You want it to be able to last the whole day. And another reason with that is if it doesn't last the whole day, then you've got to reapply it, and then you're using it up quicker. So I completely get that. But I guess for me personally, it's about the scent. It's about how it smells. It's about the artistry of the perfumer and how they blended the ingredients together and what they created. For me, that's what it's about. Obviously, at the same time, I want people to smell it on me and go, I love how it smells. But that's the main thing for me. And it's dependent on your perspective. Some people obviously wear perfume for longevity. Some people wear it for more the performance and how it smells. I guess it's a subjective part of fragrance, but that's what makes it fun.
Let me ask you a couple of technical questions then.
Yeah.
Is when you're in, when everything opens back up and people start, doing the testers again, instead, on the strips and everything. And also, let me preface it by saying this. I know when I see a lot of photos of famous perfumers, like Alberto, and there's always a picture of them smelling a strip. And when you go into the store and they hand you the strip, there's some talk in the community. Is that the best way to test your fragrance, or should it be sprayed directly to the person? What is your stance on that?
Okay, so again, it's dependent on various factors. I think obviously the ideal situation is you spray it on a pulse point on somebody's skin, and you spray it obviously a distance from their skin, so they're not just smelling the fragrance ethanol, the denatured alcohol. That's the ideal thing, because that's how a fragrance truly performs well. Fragrance is built for skin, and every single person, I'm sure many people have heard this already, everyone's got very different skin. Fragrance performs on every different skin type differently. It's so dependent on the pH levels in your skin. It's dependent on what you use in the shower, what moisturizers you use. All of these things are dependent. So if you're smelling it on a blotter, you're not going to really know what it's like on your skin. So that's the simple answer. The more complex thing is, if you go into a store, many people may be already wearing fragrance, so they don't obviously want to put fragrance on them.
Good
or
point.
when you're handing out really quickly to somebody, you don't always have time to quickly spray them. So sometimes the blotter is, and look, the blotters are designed to hold fragrance really well. They're designed for the fragrance to smell at its optimum and its best. So they definitely don't affect the fragrance. It just means that you're not going to get the most authentic version of that fragrance on your skin. There may be a particular note that smells more boosted or enhanced on your skin. A fragrance may have bergamot, lemon and lime in it, and the lemon note may be the note that highlights on your particular skin, whilst on another person's skin it may be the bergamot note. So I always recommend, of course, another thing I'd recommend also is, if you are going to a store to try perfumery, obviously don't wear a fragrance in the morning. Also, try not to put too many scented products on your skin, things like scented moisturizers and things like that, because you want it to be as true to your actual smell of your skin as possible. So that's the easier answer and the more long-winded answer. That's the truth.
Okay, well, that's awesome. I appreciate that. As you talk, all these other questions that are not written down pop up in my head, so I apologize. But is there a way to boost the longevity of a fragrance?
Is there a way to boost the longevity of a fragrance? There's things that you can not do to make sure that the longevity is boosted, and there's things that you can do right to make a fragrance, I guess, unless you're the perfumer creating it in the lab, maybe adding to a higher concentration of something, and there's not really much more. But what you can do is you can help it, you can help elevate it. So the first thing I would do is make sure that I'm applying properly. I
was just going to ask you how to do that.
Yeah, so if you're applying properly, of course, you're going to give the fragrance a better chance of it, I guess, lasting on your skin. So you want to be spraying pulse points. I think I've got a video on it on my IGTV from about a year ago on my Instagram. But
awesome.
Pulse points, obviously the typical ones here in the wrist. You've also got behind the elbow. Obviously, you've got the collarbone areas here. So there's some of the main areas that you can spray. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Also behind the ears. Yeah. Forgot that one. Yeah. Behind the ears. So, obviously, spraying it in the right places gives you an opportunity. Obviously, if you're doing lots of like sporty activities and you're running around a lot, the fragrance isn't going to last on your skin as much, because the whole point about longevity is it's just about how volatile the ingredients are on your skin. The more volatile they are, the quicker they're going to evaporate off your skin. So if you're obviously running around and being really energetic, the fragrance isn't going to last as long on your skin. But
okay.
But another aspect to it is, so a lot of people, they frown upon, we call them the ancillary products, but basically what I mean is things like the fragrance body lotions, the deodorants, the shower gels, things that you get in the Christmas gift sets that no one actually wants. But and they sit in your drawer all year. But if you do manage to find a branded one that goes with your fragrance, so say for instance you're wearing, I don't know, Zaharoff Cool Water, for instance, and you manage to find a shower gel version or body cream to put with it, or deodorant, these will help the fragrance to last longer on your skin as well, because these body products, they go deeper into your skin cells. So essentially, if you wear it with the fragrance, it's going to last longer. It's going to take longer to evaporate off your skin. So I guess these are some of the tips I can give, which helps enhance it, I guess. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So not enhance it, helps it last longer. Sorry. Hope that's. Is there any other questions regarding longevity, or do you think has that answered?
No, it's just it's something you see come up in the community where some people talk about applying body lotion, or I've even heard somebody talk about if you add molecule one first, and then so people are always trying to talk about ideas, or and then there's some people are like, no, don't spray it on your clothes because some of the concentration can ruin your clothes. But so I was just curious, because some people spray it in their hair, and then other people tell you don't do that, it's bad for you, and just so on and so forth. So I was just wondering what some of your thoughts were on it.
The reason why I would say don't spray it in your hair is the main reason for that is because you have a high concentration of ethanol, alcohol. Alcohol dries out hair, and it dries out hair. So if you put it in your hair, it's just going to dry your hair out. So that's why a lot of brands have now created hair mist versions of their fragrances, so you can use it in your hair.
I didn't know that.
At the end of the day, like you can use the hair mist, feel free. Like it's gonna hold in the cells in your hair. Sorry, not the hair mist, the fragrance. But the problem is if you just want to dry your hair out, it's up to you.
Okay. I hope you don't mind these questions. They're just popping in my head.
No. That's it's great to be able to just have a chat and to share with you some of the things that can give some tips to the fragrance community.
I'm being selfish. I'm wanting to learn. Also, I was having a discussion with a good friend of mine who's in the fragrance community, and we were talking about heat and temperature and cold weather, and we had heard a very famous fragrance influencer talking about storing, I think it was a Versace Mantle Fraiche in the refrigerator, and it was had this cooling effect, and we were kind of going back and forth whether or not putting it in the refrigerator would damage the fragrance. We know extreme heat can be bad for storing your fragrances, but we were wondering if storing them in a cool place like a refrigerator would do anything to the fragrance.
Okay, so
dumb question, I know.
No, good question. It's very dependent on the composition. It's dependent on the concentration of alcohol in the fragrance. It's dependent on what synthetic notes are used, what natural notes are used. It's completely dependent on many of these things. Fragrance is meant to be kept at room temperature, and it's meant to be kept in a dry place as best as you can, because this is how the aroma molecules in the scent, I guess, they can be kept at the most optimum level. Again, when you're cooling something down, it would probably be dependent on what ingredients are in the fragrance. But my recommendation would be to keep it just in a cool, dry place with no light around.
Okay, perfect.
I think that too much heat would probably damage it more than being cooled.
Okay, perfect.